There you go.
Testing my technology skills. Before we begin, I will state that as it relates to the 2024 parochial report, that is why we're here. We're here to just go over on a high level what's being asked. Of course, everyone probably still has in their possession what the old one looks like, but we're going to focus on what it looks like today. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Please give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. I'm going to enlarge it a little bit. Thank you, because I will forget sometimes that it may look a little tinier on your end than on my end. All right.
Good.
Wonderful. I will state that this is only a report generated by the denomination. It is not a report that is created by the diocese. And the diocese does use components of the report to calculate the pledge assessments that we typically ask for late summer. I will also state that within the new parochial report, there is not an instruction booklet. You may have already gone out to the link and kind of looked at it a little bit. I'm not sure, but there's no longer an instruction booklet that accompanies the report. What the denomination has done, they have put instructions within the report so that you will be able to see it right there on the screen and you don't have to toggle or go find them. It's right there ready for you. I will state this, the page that you're seeing here that page did not change at all. This is still your standard information that name of your congregation, the address, all of this will look familiar. No changes to page 1 of the parochial report. So now we're going to turn our attention to page 2, the congregation, and Canon Rob will review the sections on attendance and impact, communicants in good standing, active members and participants in the reporting congregation. And then we'll take a few questions, but if you do have questions along the way, please feel free to use the chat and I'll come back at the end potentially and we can address those questions. Also, if there's a burning question that you've asked and Canon Rob and I are not aware of the answer, I'm going to jot it down and I'm going to email the denomination who put out this report to get an answer, and I can create a Q&A and send it back out to everyone who has attended today, as well as when this video goes out, recording goes out, I can also attach the Q&A. So that's the game plan on how we'll direct it. So once Canon Rob finishes his section on the congregation information, then I'll come back in and pick up as we talk about the stewardship component. Canon Rob, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Canon Elisa. I think that this part of the report, I always think of as the easier part of the report than the financial section. And some things I think they have made simpler, and I kind of like it better. But there are a couple things that I think are going to confuse a lot of us, and I'll talk about where we can try to find some of that information. So in this first section, attendance and impact, I like what they've done here. So lines 1 through 5, as it says, helps us measure the scope and reach of all churches while acknowledging that not every participant or person is impacted by the church that they are a member. In addition, our hope is that these questions also capture long distance virtual engagement. So the first one is straightforward, average Sunday attendance, which most of us are familiar with and know how to calculate. I'll tell you a couple things. One, if you aren't unfamiliar with how to fill out that red record of services book that you have in your sacristy, let me know. I'd love to walk you through it because I think sometimes what I see when I go around to different congregations is that people will just sort of put every service in that first line, and then it can become really confusing when it comes time to fill out this part of the report. And it can sometimes become inaccurate because things get mixed together, whether you're having morning prayer or Eucharist or whatever, or weekday services that are all just sort of in the same line. So I encourage you to really try to fill out that book correctly And if you need help with it, I'm more than happy to sit with you. Also, I didn't know about this myself until I stumbled onto it accidentally about 6 months ago, but there is an online version of that record of services book that the denomination created just about a year ago. And what's really wonderful about it, if you start using it this year, is it integrates directly with the parochial report.
Wow.
So if you are keeping it as you go, it will plug in all this information for you automatically. Even if you use that online service book, I still recommend that you keep a paper one, so you can do both. But I think it would make your life a lot easier in the future if you use that. And I can provide that link for all of you after when we send follow-up information after this Zoom. So line one, normal average Sunday attendance. And this is where it starts to get a little confusing. Average Sunday attendance online. And in the instructions below that number, it says, enter the total annual live stream attendance across all platforms. Do not include your viewed after total and divide by the number of Sunday services held. So whether you're using Facebook or YouTube or Vimeo or a combination of those, hopefully if you do have a communications person in your church or somebody who's tech savvy, they may just know how to find this information. But I think this is probably the part that's the most complicated for people, is to try to figure out those numbers. Thanks to Lucy Owens over at Grace St. Luke's, I have a short explanation of how you can look up some of this. And we're actually going to reach out to the denominational office and see if they can provide us something that's a little more detailed in case those instructions are not completely clear. But this line is just for the live views that people are watching right there on a Sunday when you're doing a service. Average weekday attendance in person. So if you have a Wednesday healing service or something like that, this is where you put those attendance numbers. Average weekday attendance online. If you stream any of those services, morning prayer, evening prayer, that you do during the week, this is where that information goes. And again, they want the live views, not the views down the road. Line 5, estimate the average number of unique non-live views your main recorded service receives within the week following broadcast. So this is when people watch after they haven't watched live. And that is where I'm saying it can get confusing. How do we find that information? Do we have to look at each individual video, or is there a spot where we can find in our account information for the whole year? So I think that's probably the toughest part of this particular section of the report. After that, outreach beneficiaries. So if you have a feeding ministry, how many people are benefiting your estimated beneficiaries of outreach ministries per week? Line 7, average volunteers that are not members. And then the instruction below clarifies this a little bit. Average number of non-member volunteers for outreach ministries is what they're looking for specifically. I remember at my old church, I actually had someone who was a member of the Flower Guild, and she didn't attend our church, but she loved being part of the Flower Guild. And that was what she did. She was a volunteer, but we wouldn't put her in this line because they're looking for outreach ministries, and that's not an outreach ministry. And this last line is where I think it's kind of interesting. They want to see what the total impact is. And it's pretty simple. You just calculate lines 1 through 7 added together, and that's your total average impact every week for the church, which I think, especially for our smaller churches, will be really nice to see, because, average Sunday attendance does not tell the whole story of who we are and the work that we do. And they've also gotten rid of a lot of the narrative questions that were trying to get at some of this impact question from the previous parochial reports. So I think that's probably a good thing. Communicants in good standing. This is baptized members of the congregation who have received Holy Communion at least 3 times during the preceding year and are faithful in corporate worship unless for good cause prevented, and in working, praying, and giving for the spread of the kingdom of God. One thing I'll point out is sometimes people ask me about this. Note that this is not asking, a communicant in good standing is not a person who's been confirmed. So you may have people in your congregation who are not confirmed, but who meet all these other criteria. They count in this. Confirmation is not required for membership or to be a communicant in good standing. So just so you note that. Active members and participants in the reporting congregation. So they want your total active members. They want your total estimated active participants. Like, you know, my old Flower Guild member might wind up in this count here. She participates in the life of the church, but she's not technically a member of the church. We all have some of those satellite people. Yeah, keep scrolling. Easter and Christmas attendance, pretty straightforward. How many people came to your Easter services, including the Easter Vigil, if you have one, in-person Christmas Eve and Christmas Day attendance. Clergy serving your congregation, total amount of clergy and staff serving the congregation, again, pretty straightforward. Who leads your primary worship services? Is a full-time person, is a supply person? Does your congregation have a unique or unusual clergy situation? Is it long-term supply? Is it clergy from elsewhere in the Anglican Communion? Yeah, I just saw the chat pop up. Yes, no, there is no fee for using that online register. It's free. Let's see. Sacraments and services. Again, straightforward. How many of the following did you provide? Number of individuals baptized, confirmed, received, baptisms, marriages, burials, number of Eucharists, number of daily offices, and then which of the following services, programs, initiatives does your church have? Straightforward. Does your church have a subsidiary or associated organization like a school or an outreach ministry? Does your church do services in other languages besides English? Keep scrolling for me. And then approximately what percentage of your congregation is white, Caucasian, or European descent? And what's the estimated average age of your congregation? That part of the report, except for all that online view stuff, which is going to be a little confusing, I think, for all of us, is pretty straightforward, I think.
And Rob, we have a couple more questions in the chat. I'll read one for you.
Please.
Regarding the attendance and impact section of the report, it appears that it might be difficult to account for the number of persons in one location when viewing online via Zoom. How are other churches handling that? Would you recommend doing a poll during service or something? Poll of simply how many people are viewing in your location?
That's a lot. Hold on, let me read that question for myself. It might be difficult to account for the number of persons in one location when viewing online via Zoom. Oh, so do you mean, I assume you mean that if there are 4 people in a house that are all viewing, how are other churches handling that? Would you recommend doing a poll during service or something? I mean, I guess you could do something like that over your Zoom service. I think when it comes to this kind of stuff, you do the best you can. It may not be exactly right, but yeah, that's a good point that sometimes there are 2, 3, 4 people in one house, a family worshiping together over Zoom. And yeah, I guess you could ask, but I think it's a do the best you can situation.
I think you can, if you don't mind me just making some suggestions, Levani and others. Yes, you can ask. If your Zoom allows for polling, which I think it does, and if it's available for you, you can just do a quick poll right at the end before you finish. And I know there's another platform, something really is free called Jot Form. You could create a quick Jot Form and ask, how many is in attendance. But I think that's a little extreme. But if the Zoom if you're using Zoom, I think it does allow for polling or just a very, in the chat, how many are in attendance. Keep it real simple. Okay, I saw this.
How do we account for service impacts when we don't do projects weekly, but maybe every 6 weeks or seasonally? If it were me, Sally, what I would do is I would just total up all those, 6-week instances from across the year and divide it by 52. And you'll see what the average weekly would be. What other ones? Am I missing another one?
No, I believe you answered the one from Sally, didn't you?
Yes.
Sorry, I was responding to Hester. She was saying that Holy Trinity has a live stream who looks at the number on the screen as the service is being streamed. And that's definitely always a good way to gather, who's right there real time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to close out the chat on my end. And I'm going to start, I'm going to take over here from the stewardship information. And as it states on the screen, giving information for 2024, you're going to indicate your reporting currency, which will be the US dollar. And then the stewardships, lines 1 and 2 remain the same. I will state that the reasons why the denominations are asking these questions. So for stewardship, it's trying to help the denomination see the evolving nature of pledge campaigns and their relationship to other contribution trends. That's what lines 1 and 2 are helping the denomination determine. But those 2 items did not change from what you currently have answered in the past. As it relates to the revenue section, they're asking about the revenue to help us understand the amount and types of financial resources that your church takes in each year. So that's the why. And under each one, so for number 3, pledge, and other contributions to the general support, this definition will be defined as all contributions to the church that are not restricted for a specific purpose. Line 4, contributions restricted by contributors for specific purposes. Definition, all contributions for which the contributor directed, restricted, designated the money to a specific purpose. Line 5, all other revenue received except for gains on the church's investments. Do not include the gains and losses realized and unrealized on the church's investment. That information will be reported in line 9 below. Each section will have an example to assist you with completing that section. So here in the revenue section, the example B and C is your example, and then it speaks to it on how to report it here on this column 3, 4, or 5. And then you'll notice that the wording has changed. So lines 3, 4, and 5 is now called total revenue. Some of you who've been familiar with the previous report, it would have said total normal operating income. That wording has been changed by the denomination. It is now called total revenue. The expenses. The expenses are questions to help the denomination visualize the cost of ministry and other financial obligations of your church. Here's the example they're giving to help you complete this section. So line 6, church non-capital expenses, which are your operating expenses, all church expenses incurred to operate and support ministries and programs. Line 7 is your non-operating expenses, and they've categorized it as church capital expenses. All expenses for the purchase of property, buildings, and equipment. These are considered your total expenses. Then we move into a section that's year end. Let me not say something new. Year end, line 8. These are questions about your year-end account balances to help the denomination determine the financial assets at the church's disposal. It is asking for all cash, checking, and savings balance. Report on this line the total balances of all cash accounts maintained in the name of the congregation at the end of the reporting year. And this information can be found on your balance sheet of your financials. So now we go into the supplemental information, and this section here is where you'll find some new data they're asking for, and they also moved a piece from the total revenue, previously total normal operating income. They pulled it into this supplemental section. But these questions are being asked to help the denomination gather more information about special circumstances facing your church. Line 9, does your congregation have an endowment or other investment accounts? So in this case, many congregations have one or more endowment fund or other investments from which they withdraw money to supplement other revenue. So I just want to make sure that's what they're just making a comment on that. 9.9a states, list your financial assets, numerical responses. In this section, you will provide a numerical, a number, not the value. So that's what that's asking for in section line 9A. 9B, what was the percentage draw? The percentage withdrawn for use in 2024. This is a calculated number. And the calculated number is back up here where it talks right here, the percentage draw. So 9B, the percentage draw on your investment funds is the amount of money used by the church during the year divided by the market value of the funds at the end of the prior year. That's how you calculate 9B. Line 9C, what was the dollar amount drawn for use? This is where you put the value of how much was drawn in the previous year from your endowment or your investment. Line 9B is another calculated number. What was your net gain, loss, realized and unrealized in your investment accounts? So up here at the top, another, see, it starts right here. The definitions for that calculation, your net gains or losses on your investment accounts are the total dividend and interest revenue, along with net unrealized and realized gains and losses on your investments. Please include fees paid to the investment advisor, and you are allowed to enter a negative number. So lines 9B and lines 9D are calculated. 9C is an actual value. And if you look at the example E that they provided in the supplemental section, it breaks down how you would calculate the value to enter on line, the percentage you would enter on line B. Then example E continue will give you what you would enter on line D. So you can just substitute your numbers in this calculation to help you determine 9B and 9D. 9.10, does your congregation have any outstanding debt, including credit card debt? Many churches carry debt for a variety of reasons. Report whether your church had outstanding debt at the end of the reporting year, how much, and what the debt was for. And it tells you what else to include. Then as we wrap up, line 11, does your congregation own building and or land? That's a yes or no. Does your congregation rent or lease all or a portion of the buildings or land to groups outside your congregation? Yes or no. And then they'll go into a little bit more detail, 12A and 12B. How much revenue did you earn from renting or leasing to an outside group? What expenses did your church incur from renting or leasing to an outside group? Then we have just some questions. This is optional. How is your parish reducing your carbon footprint? What is one program or initiative at your church that you feel best exemplifies your congregation? And what is one program or initiative at your church that represents your hope for the future of your congregation or the greater Episcopal Church? So those are some short answer questions that the denomination is asking. So now I do see some chat. So let me go and see what we have.
I can help you with those. If you would like.
Thank you.
The first one is, would the do good and share grants go in line 5?
Let's see. All our revenues. Example of revenue. Report includes grants from organizations, fundraising revenue, sales from a church. So it does say it does include grants from organizations. I will circle back. Let me just think about that and have a conversation to see, because it says organization, but we're like the diocese doing this, to help with the ministry. So we need to have a conversation in regards to around how that will factor into the overall scheme. Excellent question. Thank you for asking. Reverend Mathis, I will definitely get back to you on that.
This next one we knew was going to come up. Will
where it is. Yes, we did.
will our diocesan assessment now be on total revenue lines 3, 4, and 5? No. It won't be based on that. Well, Ken and Elisa, please jump in on this at any time.
Sure.
We've talked a lot about this, and what I can tell you is that, as Ken and Elisa said at the beginning of the Zoom call, this is a denominational report. So we being the diocese of the church, were given little or no warning that this change was going to be made, which would eliminate the line that we and most other dioceses use, called NOI, normal operating income. The finance committee and B&C are aware of the problem with this, and we probably have a solution for it. I think it's fair to say that the intention is that the NOI number is still going to be the number that it is based on, but we will be following up with you in the next couple of weeks with some instructions about exactly how to handle that. But no, it won't be based on the total of lines 3, 4, and 5. I think probably what we will be doing is asking you for your normal operating income separately, and then figuring out how we move forward, which is what everybody is sort of asking right now, because all the dioceses only found out about this within the last couple of weeks. Is that fair, Ken and Elisa? Anything to add?
It is fair. Yes, that is exactly a great way to explain that question. So, but I am jotting all these questions down. We'll make sure we have it in our Q&A when it goes back out. So no, you stated it correctly.
Is
it's
the amount?
Yeah, I was going to address that
end
one.
of the year. Yeah.
9A. It's not, okay, line A is not the amount. It is a number. You're to list the number of your endowments, not an amount. Is that the question you're asking, Reverend Mathis? You can come off of mute.
Yeah, so that's helpful. So that's just, we have one endowment, for instance.
Right, it's a number.
Right.
9A is only numbers, not values or amounts at the end of at the end of any year. That's what they're asking for, a number.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
And would number 10 include year-end accruals?
Hold on, I'm reading number 10. Many churches. Teresa, can you come off of mute for me, please? I want to make sure I understand your question. I think I do. So for instance, if you had credit card potentially debt at the end of the year and you made an accrual because you know it's a 2024 expense, but it's going to be paid in 25. Is that what you're meaning? Oh, well, okay. Your microphone. Can you put it in the chat? Is that what you're meaning? And I probably can call you since your microphone's not working. I can just give you a phone call and I can include this in the Q&A. Oh, to include all invoices. Right. I don't believe, yes, to include all invoices that have not. So hold on. Many churches carry debt for a variety of reasons. Report whether your church has outstanding debt at the end of the year, how much and what the debt was for. Include debt to external organizations such as a bank, like a loan is what I'm thinking, like long-term liability. I don't know about short-term, such as bank or to your diocese, other person. let me get back with you on that in regards to accruals. That's what I thought you were asking, and don't think I would necessarily think regular investment would be debt. Right, I am not thinking it's considered like a credit card, or invoices. So I don't think it would be considered your invoices. I'm thinking more so long-term debt. Like a construction loan or a loan that the churches may have taken out or something of that nature. That's what I'm thinking. Or if the diocese states in here that loan money, then the diocese would be that. You would include that. Please scroll back on the screen so I can see the question. So you can see the question. This question right here, Mandy, about the accruals. Which question? You can come off of mute.
Sorry, I can't see which questions you're talking about, and I'm
this one
trying
right
to
here.
take notes, and it looks different from last year's report. So if you could just scroll back on the form to the question that you're talking about.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. This is the
Thank
question.
you.
No,
Thank
thank you for
you.
explaining. This is the question. Does your congregation have any outstanding debt, including credit card debt?
Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't, so because to me, I don't think that's invoices, credit cards, because we do have, business credit cards. I believe that's what it's asking for, that type of debt. I did see a question earlier, Ken and Rob. Did you answer this one from Sally? Did you answer that question? I just don't recall.
Which one about?
How do we count service impacts when we don't do? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Thank you. I just didn't remember him answer that. Any other questions? Let me go down. So if there aren't any other questions, that really concludes the high-level overview of the new report. Please note that myself and Ken and Rob are available for any questions after today. You can just definitely send us an email. I will try to grab all the questions that did come through the chat and create a Q&A. We're going to also include in that Q&A the link that was shared in this chat. Also, try to reach out to the denomination to see if they have any clearer instructions as it relates to that viewing of who viewed the live stream after the live stream has ended, if they have clearer instructions. Otherwise, we will include the instructions we received from Lucy Owens, I believe you said her last name was, in that. So, and then we will also be able to send out this recording to everyone who participated today and make it available to anyone in the future who missed today. Ken and Rob, do you have anything else you would like to share? And I'm going to stop sharing real quick.
No, just that I did put the parish register link in there, as Ken and Elisa mentioned. So if you want to take a look at that, you just have to set up an online account, and you could start using it here at the beginning of the year. Beverly, you had a question?
Yes, please. Hello, everybody. Ken and Elisa, would you mind scrolling down to the end of the report? Because we stopped at page 6. I'd just like to see what else is out there. Do you have time to do that?
Hold on, let me.
I think that's it.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah. That's it. That's it.
Right, that's it. Question 15, where they have these short answer questions. That's the end of it.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The good thing is it is shorter. They've gotten rid of all the kind of confusing narrative questions, but the online viewing stuff is confusing. And then there's this problem with eliminating the NOI, which creates a little bit of a headache for all of the dioceses as we try to communicate what we expect. So
I'm sure.
Okay. Well, that's all. Gonna give you all some time back for today. All right. Thank you all. Have a great day.
blessings.
Bye-bye. Likewise.